Good evening. Today is Tuesday, March 25th. I call the school committee meeting to order at 7:30. I would like to remind everyone that we are taped live and streamed on WMCT-TV. Everyone is here tonight, which is great, so welcome, except for Earl. But everyone's present who's here, so there will be no roll calls, which is great. So thank you all for being here. Much appreciated. So having said that, I call the meeting to order, and we will, if we can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty, thank you very much. We will jump down to the superintendent's report. Miss Mary Murphy.
Thank you, Mayor Christian. Bless you. Earlier today, I met with Judy Crocker from Safe Routes to School. At that time, she shared the Marlboro student route maps, which are maps that they've identified as routes to safely walk to school for each of the schools. And that is one presentation that I would like to do at the next school committee meeting. And each individual school received a student radius map where she mapped out all of the expected students for next year in their school. So we can see where all those students are and identify safe walking routes to each school. It's very funny because for most of the schools, the routes that she has identified and the safe routes are the same as the initial planning for the principals, but I've asked for them to meet with me prior to the next meeting just so that we can have the first public presentation and start the discussion in the city about what it would look like. She's also recommended a couple of extra crosswalks, not as many as the elementary principal, so I would like to compare that information, and we'll share both during their presentation at the next meeting. I have also wanted to update the committee about the Goodnow elementary principal search. As we know, Goodnow principal Amy Mulcohen has accepted a position in another district, and her last day in Marlboro will be June 30th, 2025. We are beginning a search process for a new Goodnow principal. People at Goodnow are really anxious to get the search moving. The updated job description is attached to my report. I will also be sending out this week, looking for parents and staff volunteers to serve on an interview committee. And my proposed timeline is the first round of interviews the week of April 14th. Finalists having site visits and superintendent interview the week of April 28th, and an appointment announcement at the May 13th school committee meeting. So, any questions?
Yes. I go directly to you. I know.
Shocker.
No.
Yeah. So thank you for the information. Relative to the school walking zones and the safety information, definitely looking forward to reviewing that information. Couple questions. Traffic Commission meeting is tomorrow morning.
I think it's Friday.
Oh, then that's gotten moved and
Correct.
not advised, so thank you.
I think an email went out. I think the agenda went out, and I think it is on Friday. Yeah.
I guess even though I had been warned about the meeting on Wednesday, I had not gotten the follow-up that it's now on Friday.
Police chief is not available. So he's
Okay.
away. I'm going to confirm that. Please continue your question.
So, on that note, I will not be able to be there on that meeting now on Friday because I am out of town. So, I'm just curious if we wanted to go into that meeting at least giving them a heads up so that hopefully we could be on the agenda for the next meeting to really better discuss some of the crosswalk needs and things like that were being suggested.
I think the next meeting, asking to be on the agenda for the next meeting is much more reasonable.
Exactly.
Because then we can compare our request to what Safe Routes has suggested.
Right.
They've also suggested a few locations where if the DPW did some targeted work, could expand the walking zones, and they have suggestions on what that would look like.
That's
But
great.
that's a future project.
Yeah.
That is not an immediate project.
Great. And then the other question is, with a number of the new apartment complexes that are going up, where we've had some conversation because a number of them have 2 or 3 bedroom apartment situations. Have those areas also been factored in, just to make sure that we're thinking about how they're going to fit into what we currently are designating for the district? Like, the ones in French Hill would seem to be that those possibly would be open. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure.
There are 3 schools that send from that area of the city, so it depends on what elementary school is. And in the past, because of overcrowding issues, we have identified certain complexes to go to another school. So prior to having some more details, I would be hesitant to say about that one. The Route 20 one, we've been- McGee's Farm. We've talked a lot about that because potentially we'll have to change schools because those.
They go to Jarrick now.
They would be designated for Jarrick, and Jarrick cannot take a number of students from that area or any more. Kane potentially could, especially if they have a reduction after this year.
So, thank you. That's really what I was getting to, is that if it's possible, Mayor Christian, for you to try and spearhead on getting some of the information around specifics of when they think some of those apartments may be opening, that may help us on kind of backing out the idea of where kids may either need to head, if there has to be any form of redistricting, or if we need to take into consideration around the walking areas. And I'm not trying to hop too far ahead, but I think we probably need to have these conversations knowing when the approximate open times are going to be, because
Also supposed to open in April. I mean, they're,
They're
looks like it's
leasing.
pretty-
no, they're already
They're already
advertising and they're
advertising.
taking applications, so.
yes, I get it. I also am remembering a conversation that we had around the table a couple years ago when some of these were being discussed, and we were told that there would not be any children moving
we have
into these.
2 and 3 bedrooms.
So
yeah.
I'm kind of thinking they're going to be children, considering they're 2 or 3 bedrooms, and that's why I'm asking if we can try and start having that
So it is
conversation.
my understanding also that the McGee Farm units have a walking path built in that potentially, or the plan is a walking path to go to Kane School.
Right.
The complication is that Safe Routes have identified a number of 3-season paths
Right.
in Marlboro, so that would be something that we would need to know if it's a 3-season or a
Really get loud.
4-season.
Exactly.
And they've put some of those paths on our maps, so at least we're aware of them.
Okay. Thank you. Those were just a number of the points that I wanted to make sure we were kind of starting to flesh it out. So, thank you.
Just to confirm, Traffic Commission is on Friday at 10 a.m.
Awesome. Thank you.
letting you know.
I appreciate you updating my calendar.
Don't want you to waste your time by going to a meeting that doesn't exist.
Sounds good.
Does it make sense for someone else
Yeah.
to go in your place? Are you on the traffic commission, or you just been attending meetings?
No, I've been attending to support Superintendent Murphy and
I
and
believe
Ms.
Principal
Patel.
Patel is
Is
attending
planned.
on Friday.
Because I potentially could go if,
Because the Jarrick School crosswalks on the
Yes.
agenda.
Yeah.
That's the reason, so, yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate you letting me know.
where do they meet? City Hall?
Yep, Memorial Hall, 3rd floor. Sure. Oh, yeah, the
There's a
lift,
couple of
Yeah.
little
yeah,
stairs.
the lift does not work to get into Memorial Hall.
Yeah.
It's like, it is 3 stairs.
It's like 3 steps, yeah. I could bring my crutches.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on superintendent's report? Yes.
Could you
Mr.
tell me
Dang.
what changes, if any, you made in the updated?
Specifically the format. It should be attached, but we tried to organize the responsibilities in a format that was more user-friendly. And I believe some of the requirements about MCAS, because that is changing, even though we're still requiring all students.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anything else? Moving on.
Did she not
Ms.
attach?
Gossett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First item on my report is 2025 MCAS testing. Spring MCAS testing is set to begin. It actually did begin today. In the months of March and April, Marlborough High School test proctors ran their infrastructure test last Thursday, March 20th. And Marlborough High School actually begun its testing in ELA today on Tuesday, March 25th. The infrastructure tests for grades 3 through 8, meaning infrastructure testing the system, making sure that the network is ready to hold that amount of students testing at the same time. That infrastructure test for grades 3 through 8 is scheduled for Tuesday, April 1st, with testing to begin the week of April 7th. Administrators and test proctors have been trained on how to utilize the new Lighthouse testing platform and are prepared to administer the MCAS test this season. Thank you to Chris Henry and Michael Lessert for preparing our administrators with the new testing logistics. Moving down to Investigating History Grant Award, I'm very excited to report and announce that we have been awarded grant funding to support the continued implementation of the Investigating History curriculum in grades 3 through 7. This past school year, we have piloted the curriculum in select grade 5 classrooms and launched year 1 of implementation in grades 6 and 7. Additionally, we have been awarded grant funding for the Democratic Knowledge Project Civics curriculum in grade 8. That funding will provide us with professional development to continue the second straight year of implementation in grade 8. The grant convening for these awards is on April 14th. The elementary principals and Dr. Reyes will be joining me to accept these awards. Citywide Art Show and Wellness Night is coming very soon. We have combined our Citywide Art Show and Wellness Night on the same night at Whitcomb. On April 3rd, starting at 5:30 p.m., our art show exhibits will be open for display. For anyone who's attending, please enter at the rear entrance by the registration office. And then shortly thereafter at 6 p.m., we will start the Wellness Night. We will begin our Wellness Night festivities, and please enter at the front door by the main Whitcomb office. And then finally on my report, the Spring Council of Administrators for Compensatory Education, otherwise known as CASE Conference. On April 9th and 10th, Principal House, Mr. Chris Henry, and our elementary principals will participate in the 2025 CASE Conference. The conference is designed as a strategic working opportunity for district teams. Preliminary ideas for our 2024-25 MPS roadmap came from last year's conference workshops. The team is charged with identifying the initial ideas for the continuation of instructional priorities for next school year. As a point of mention, this conference is funded through the Title I grant.
Any questions? Yes, Ms. Michelle.
RJ, are the Investigating History grant and the Civics grant, are they DESE grants? Who?
It's an organization called the 1-8 Foundation. So it's its own, I believe, nonprofit organization. Don't quote me on that, but it's separate from DESE. It was a competitive grant, so we were one of many districts who applied, and each elementary school applied individually. We were lucky that each elementary school principal was willing to take on that responsibility and endeavor, as well as Principal House on behalf of Whitcomb School. And then we were very fortunate to be awarded the grant at all 4 elementaries and at Whitcomb. It is a grant that comes with professional development. That's the primary use of the grant funds, is to provide us with the professional development to educators to make sure that they are well prepared to implement the curriculum. The curriculum itself is primarily digitally housed. There are workbooks that you can purchase too, but a lot of it is housed in the Google platform.
How, I mean, for equity purposes, how would they give it to like one elementary school and not the other elementary
Well,
schools?
I
how
think
does
it's
that-
still kind of in a pilot phase is the way I interpret it. So you can start at one elementary and then branch out from there. Again, we were fortunate that each elementary teacher said, nope, we're ready. Let's take this on now. They are starting in grade 4, and the 1-8 Foundation has informed us that there is an opportunity to experiment a little bit with an additional layer of piloting in grade 4. And Principal Patel has already reached out and said she'd be willing to do that specifically.
Great. Thanks.
Just for clarification, so if you want to go to the citywide art show, you go in the rear door at 5:30, but the wellness, you go in the front door at 6.
Yes, and they don't have to, they can traverse throughout the building. So if you're at
have
the
to go
art
outside
show,
and
you've
walk
seen
around.
some of the
That's what I just
exhibits
wanna make
and the
sure.
artwork. You can just walk up the
Yeah.
stairs and head to the
Yeah.
wellness night, which is in what I consider to be the front of the building.
Sure.
And vice versa. If you come a little later to the wellness night and you want to go and see the artwork, you can just walk down the hallway
Okay,
and down the stairs.
perfect.
Can you clarify, like, what happens at the wellness night?
Thank you for asking. I was thinking I
'Cause
should
the
probably
art
clarify
show-
this.
The art show, I know.
So
We've
it's
had that
Title
forever.
III funded, and Title I has recently joined in the effort. So wellness is kind of a broad term for this event. There are a variety of vendors that show up. So we're talking about wellness with physical activity, wellness with hygiene. We have a local dentist that comes. There's representation from Marlborough Hospital, I believe. We have some of the local Marlborough-based martial arts and physical activity organizations that come to promote just health and well-being. We also have a presenter that comes to present on the topic of social, emotional health and well-being when it comes to combating our students and, quite frankly, some of our adults' use of technology, cell phones primarily. So that presentation is specifically around how to mitigate some of the use of technology on the home front so it doesn't become more of an addiction than it currently is. So there are a variety of things. There's food there, too. It's a great night. It's all grant funded. There's a raffle at the end of it. Come one, come all. And
So do they do it like in the cafeterias?
they have
or-
the vendors set up in the blue cafeteria, I believe, in both cafeterias, blue
Yeah.
and yellow, and then the presentation will be in the auditorium. There is also childcare for families that want to come. It's actually encouraged that you bring children with you. We have childcare that we're providing in the Whitcomb Commons.
And for those people who have children in the district and get things like notices, people know about this.
Yes,
It's
they
been
should
well
know that there's
publicized.
been, So it is primarily.
Did you know about it at all?
No.
It's primarily because of the grant funding in association with Title I in particular, targeted toward our elementary and middle school families.
Okay.
That's why the marketing, if you will, at the secondary level at the high school wasn't there.
But I bet those babysitters were coming from the high school.
Babysitters are actually staff.
Oh,
We have staff
interesting.
members that they get compensated through the grant at an hourly rate to provide childcare. So any family that falls within that scope of elementary, middle school age student can come and bring a younger child with them.
Excellent.
Excellent. Sounds like a great night.
Yeah,
Should be fun.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Scazzo? No? Okay, moving on. Director of Finance and Operations, fiscal year 26 budget presentation. Mr. Wells.
Yes, thank you. Connecting now. It's going well. Excellent. Thank you. So the FY26 Superintendent's budget request being presented right now. The FY26 budget request is $84,224,398. That's an 11.1% increase over the FY25 budget, or an increase of $8,448,524. Funding for this, first we're going to look at the net school spending. As you can see here, the green dotted line represents the required net school spending, and the dark line represents our actual net school spending. As we look at this chart, it's interesting to see the past couple of years that our required net school spending has grown, and our actual is starting to look like it's going to converge with that line. It's certainly a topic that we need to be very aware of, that we're about to hit minimum required spending within the schools. So we have to make sure that we're staying focused on that as we're building this budget. We need to fill that back up to make sure that we're staying above our net school spending.
Matt?
Yes.
Can I just for the public, because school finance is a very complicated animal, and we use a lot of terms that even we who understand it sort of still don't understand all those terms. Can you just define net school spending, like the different types of
Yeah,
funding? Can you explain those?
Chapter
to people?
70
Thank
is the
you.
money that it flows in from the federal government, and the state provides funding to all the school districts. That's your Chapter 70 funding. So the Chapter 70 formula is based upon the needs of the district and the ability for the district to be able to fund education. So different school districts get different funding levels from Chapter 70. Net school spending is part of this formula, where the state has, they run the formula based upon the ability of the school, the municipality, the town, to be able to support education, and they run their formulas, and this is the minimum required spending that you would have for your town municipality on your school district to support education as it flows. So that's kind of the simplest explanation of it. So the state provides that minimum required net school spending and tells us, you need to be here. Most school districts are, as you can see, you look at, even all the way back from FY01 up through 23, we had a nice gap there. We were staying well above our net school spending requirement. We were certainly making sure we were investing within our schools, make sure we were giving enough money there. Inflation has come along. We also are a district that does have need. We've received money from SOA, the Student Opportunity Act. That money was intended for specific uses for the school district because we do have that need within our schools. The way that the state set up that funding model, it wasn't set up as sort of a grant that was given directly to the schools, which would have been the most appropriate way for that money to get to the school to make sure that those dollars were going directly to those students. We were not given that opportunity because the state took that model, and what it really became is simply just a reorganization of Chapter 70. So by making it a reorganization of Chapter 70, it is simply, at this point, called Chapter 70. So we still refer to it as SOA because that we have to report how we're spending that money that we're not really kind of receiving. So like when we get a grant, we know that grant, we say how that grant's gonna get spent, we have all this data around it, and we reported directly how that money is spent. This is a little less defined because it flows in as just as the state's Chapter 70 funding. So
Can I just clarify? I'm sorry to interrupt again, but
Please do.
just for
I can ramble on for a
clarification,
lot.
Chapter 70 funds, which are designated to the schools to meet the needs of the specific students that we have in our district, that money does not come to the school. It goes to the city.
that's correct.
And then we are appropriated money through the process of the mayor, then the city council.
Yeah.
So the city council ultimately gets to decide how much money we get regardless of what the state says we need.
That is correct. Yep. So the money flows in as revenue into the municipality, and then the funding model, we're a department of the city that receives a budget as that goes. It does not flow directly to the schools.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify.
Thank you. It wasn't part of my presentation, but I always like to, try to talk about Chapter 70. It's a hard concept to communicate. The formulas are exceedingly complicated in how it flows that money into school districts, and trying to make it digestible is sometimes hard, and it is good to kind of try and help people to understand it a little bit. The next set of charts are our per pupil expenditures. So this is the cost per pupil for what we spend within the school district from 2019 through 2023. And 2023 is the last published data at this point in time. FY24 has been submitted as the end-of-year report by all the districts, but it has not been processed yet by DESE to flow into the charts. So we picked, we have some comparable districts here, Hudson, Northborough, Southborough. We have the state average as well. Framingham, Clinton, Maynard, Milford, and Fitchburg. A number of these are SOA districts as well, just like ours. And some of them are close as a locale and share borders with us. As you can see as we flow through, inflation over the same time period was about 19.8%. Marlboro's increase in their per pupil expenditure was 8.8%, the lowest increase of all of the comparables and lower than the state average. Most of these districts, all the districts are within double digits as far as what their increase was over that time. A good portion of them are in the 20 percentile, 20 to 25th percentile, which is the state average. So they're keeping in line with the state average. We have not done so. The next chart will kind of show you very visually what's going on here. So if we look back, we are the dotted black line, and the state average is the dotted red line. All the other lines represent the other comparable districts. In 2019, we were right at the state average, which is pretty good to where you want to be as far as funding your school district. We have flattened out. We have only increased about 8.8%, and as we previously showed, the state went up about 25% in the state average during that time period. So you can see a huge gap has grown, and we're now near the bottom, almost at the bottom of our comparable districts that we're looking at. Only Clinton is slightly smaller with about, I think, $70 less than what we spend on a per pupil.
Can I just say one thing to this also?
Yes.
When you're looking at this chart, which is an interesting thing. So if you look at Hudson, who is in a precarious position of their budget this year, okay? They have to go for a Prop 2.5 override. They've continued that growth. And we are nowhere near our tax levy, and we'll never be near our tax levy. And it makes you curious, shall we say, as to why we have flatlined or even decreased over that time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not good to be flat with that. It's certainly we want to make sure that we're funding on a per pupil basis. Needs have increased, and the money is just not going as far as it used to. And inflation is a big driver on this, and we just have not. Marlboro has not kept up with the rate of inflation, which that 19.8 is one of the conservative numbers. There are a number of different inflationary factors that you can pull in, and some of them are as high as 40% for the same 5 years, depending on what you're looking at. If it's building materials, if it's labor, all different pieces. So the 19.8 was one of the conservative numbers that was out there.
Sorry, one more thing
Go ahead.
to add on this slide before we leave it, or the next, or the one before. Per pupil, if we actually look back on the 2018, we were actually above the state average, and that was the last year we were above it, because that was 16,311.39.
Yeah.
As
So
opposed to their 15,952.
Right. So to be fair, in 19, that's the first time we ticked just below the state average. We were close to it, but ticked just below it.
So I just have to say that, for many, many years in this community, we have kind of always prided ourselves that our community and our municipal side has supported the schools above and beyond what they were required to do. And that has kind of been a talking point for, I've been sitting in the seat for 20 years now. That was kind of the mantra, like that's what we do here in Marlboro. And it's kind of shocking to see that, in fact, that's absolutely not what is happening. And even though the state and the federal government are giving us more and more and more money to meet the needs of our students, we are not getting that from our municipality any longer.
Moving on, so looking at the budget analysis, we are in line with a lot of other school districts. We are 83% of our expenditures are on salary. It's the biggest part of our expenditure that we have. And 70% runs through non-salary. The breakout of those salary numbers is also in line with a lot of other districts. We're seeing 85% of our funding is spent on instructional services directly, with 7% of district leadership, and then smaller amounts for other school services, operations, and administrative support. So what does that kind of look at as far as our drivers that are going into the budget, the biggest portion of it's inflation that's really driving our budget. And inflation over the past 3 to 5 years has really pushed this. So when we had our collective bargaining agreements and our staff, took 0, 1, 2 for their increases over the 3 years leading up to now, we also had 20% inflation over that time period. So, we have to support salary, which is the biggest part of what we do here. So collective bargaining agreements settled for our largest unions at a fair rate when compared to inflation, and the largest part of our increase is about almost $5 million for salary alone. The new transportation contract came in and settled lower than was anticipated due to change in service delivery. So we have to note very clearly that it came in lower than what we anticipated, but we are going to be running 25 buses versus 33. We run 33 buses right now of yellow buses. We are only planning to run 25 next year. So we have reduced the service delivery, which kept that cost more in line with what we expected. Otherwise, it would have been about $650 higher, which is almost a full point would have been added to the budget.
$650,000.
My apologies. I did that earlier too. $650,000.
We had done a level service contract with the bus company, would have been 40% over what we were paying?
Yep. The actual
But
per
we
unit.
chose to change the way we're doing business to bring those costs down.
Yep.
So we actually did a reduction initially
We
prior
did a
to.
reduction ourselves.
So the savings has already happened. We've already saved $650,000 by making that move. But transportation did go up, yes. On a per unit basis, we went up, almost 40% on a per bus basis, but we did change the delivery model. So we also did have a special education transportation costs have increased as well. Out of district is this in district increased and out of district. Out of district is certainly that's a cost that has been increasing for a number of years now. We have seen. I remember back in the days when it was $125 per day. It was fantastic. We're not going to see that anytime soon again. So I think one of the last quotes I saw for a route that we had to run was close to $450 per day. So that is growing pretty substantially as well. And our out-of-district tuitions have grown as well. The Massachusetts Operations Services Division, or OSD, sets our tuition rates, and then we have to pay those. We have no say in that. We can lobby, and certainly our groups do lobby to try and keep that number low, but we have seen almost 23% growth in that over the past 3 years. 3 years ago, it was a 14% increase, and we've been seeing close to 5% over the past couple of years, and I would anticipate seeing 5% moving forward. We're not going to see those low increases any longer because it does cost more money to actually do these services. God bless you.
Bless you.
So that has grown considerably as well. We also do have some new placements that are in there that are causing that number to grow even further. Contracted services mirrors the tuition growth rate. They're similar services. They're all growing for the same reasons. The costs are just going up. So we had an increase in our contracted services. And then we did put a small monetary maintenance increase in for supplies, maintenance, and materials. It was 3% where it was increased, just to maintain. We haven't increased. We increased it, I think, last year, but we hadn't seen an increase in a few years before that. So we're just trying to keep up with the small amount of inflation that we're seeing that goes on with those discretionary spendings. Couple of new items that not really new. The high school credit recovery program has to be supported by appropriations, and that's due to a grant having ended. There was a grant that supported that program. That grant is no longer available, so we have to support that with appropriations. It is a critical part of our education and curriculum. And then the other piece is a new curriculum, a new math curriculum, and some curriculum consumables. This is on schedule as a replacement. We do have regular replacements of curriculum that are scheduled out. This is just a year that one's coming in, and it's a $500,000 for the new math curriculum, which is curriculum has changed considerably over the past 5 to 10 years. And the prices are following.
Can I just add something to this? This is not something that is optional. The way curriculum is adopted these days is on either a 3, a 5, a 6-year cycle, and then it expires. So without this cost for the next couple, there's no consumables, there's no math hardcover books anymore. It's online and consumables. So this is something that we have to have, it's elementary, it's K through 5, and we also have to make sure that we're aligned with the requirement from DESE for high-quality instructional materials as well.
That is correct. Thank you. So that brings us to a total budget of 11.1%. So funding projections, well, projections are a little hard right now. There's so many things that are changing. Inflation is out of control. It's up, it's down. We're not quite sure what the number is. We were happy when it was at 2.5%. Now it's 3.2. We don't quite know where it's going to land out at. So we projected forward, basically, we carried forward our level services budget for our staff at the top line. We had some of these positions that were built in FY27, and we just kept them in FY27. We are going to have conversations about those as we move into into that budget year. We're not even talking about that yet. We're still in 26. We did put in, now that we know what transportation is, we put the projected increase for transportation over the next 3 years. We also did add in the 5% expected increase for tuitions into each of the years, and contracted services at 5% as well, because that is following along. So as we look out, we're looking at some right around 7% increases over the next couple of years. We will have to look at that closely and see what we can do, where we can save. But again, the projections are hard right now. It's hard to know what's going to happen as we move down the line. We do have certainly a lot of movement at the federal level as to whether we're going to be comfortably funded moving forward. Right now, we do know that we're hearing about threats to funding. I mean, obviously, a month or two ago, we had a memo issued to stop sending out funds to the states. So, those fundings that are targeted are part of our budget. And they're not even included in this. So on the next slide, these are our non-appropriation funding items that we use to support our budget, which is nearly $5.8 million worth of funding that also must be supported within the budget. Circuit breaker, special education circuit breaker is a reimbursement program that comes from the state and helps to fund special education expenses. Our title grants are on the left-hand side. Title grants are our entitlement grants. Those are at risk. Those are certainly some of the non-appropriation funding items that are being looked at that possibly may not be funded. Now, we're hearing that FY26 we don't have to worry about, but again, I'm not going to take that very far in my pocket. Certainly we are worried because there's $3.4 million on our entitled grants, $145,000 there on our competitive grants, $3.5 million that is not supported within our appropriation budget. If that goes away, these things have to be paid for. IDA 240 grant is mainly tuitions. We have our PD built in here, and about 8 FTE they're built in as Title I as well. So we have items that are funded within this budget that we need for our students. These are critical, and we're going to have to figure out a way to fund them if that funding does go away. And it does not exist within our budget right now. We have produced 2 years of pretty lean budgets, and we simply don't have the flexibility to be able to absorb $3.5 million if that does happen to fail. Technology capital is, we got 4 years here, FY26, it's $869,000. We are pushing right up against $1 million with technology capital now. This is just a standardized replacement schedule of the technology we have. We're looking at Chromebooks, iPads, iPads for communication, our smart panels, which we just had a conversation last week about smart panels at Goodnow. So Goodnow is now at the age where those panels are starting to fail. They're at the end of their useful life. So we have panels in every single classroom. Right now we have 2 panels that failed. We can certainly figure out how to fix 2 panels. But if that failure rate starts to rise, and it rises fast at this point, 30% failure rate, we're going to have to replace a lot of panels in a new school, let alone replacing the panels that exist in other schools. So that's one I think that sometimes gets deferred because we figure out how to limp along a little bit further. We're not going to be able to limp pretty soon here. So all of this adds up, and a lot of this technology capital was supported with efficiency savings at the end of the fiscal year. So during the past 5 and probably further long years, at the end of each year, we would have efficiencies built into the budget, hiring efficiencies, holding back on some purchases, and we would free up this money to be able to purchase this. It doesn't exist anymore. It's just not within our budget, nor is it within the budget's means to be able to flex up to absorb $1 million worth of expenditures like it has in the past. So this has to be moved forward in a more traditional technology capital plan. As I've seen in many of the districts I've been in, almost all the districts I've been in before, technology was moved forward as a capital, just like facilities capital. It is done so on the city side. It's moved forward as a capital plan, and it's outside of the budgets of each of the departments. With the schools, we've had it within our department. We need to start moving that forward as a capital plan as well, as part of the total technology capital purchase for the city. And now here we are with the rest of our budget calendar. Today is right there. April 8th will be our public hearing on the proposed budget and a vote for a budget in regular session. And April 29th will be the school committee. The FY26 budget is sent to the mayor and the city council. Any questions? Excellent.
As Matt just brought up, I can only ask, and you may not have the answer, Mayor Christian, but do you know if you and the council and the city are considering putting technology back as a capital plan for the city, as opposed to how it's been separated? Because we were fortunate enough in the last couple of years, we had lots of holes in our budget as far as hiring. Now, we don't have that. And we've absorbed it because we were able to. But the reality is that it's a city project, totally. The city owns everything, and they have needs as well, and replacement needs, and it's, so I'm just curious if there has been conversation regarding it.
I have not received a capital improvement project plan from IT as of yet.
Okay, thank you. I'm just hoping it's on your radar. Thank you. Okay. Well, because I believe in our conversation last week in the workshop also was the talk of the IT people. And that's also a very important conversation.
Yes.
Staff. So how it's shared or not shared or so on. So.
Any other questions regarding the budget presentation? Seeing
Mrs. Hennessy
Yes.
would like to say something.
Yes or no?
Yes, I will. Once again, thank you all. Thank you for the presentation, and I guess I would say thank you for the workshop that we were able to have. It really allowed us to have a lot of deeper discussions around this presentation. I will say that I'm wondering, with the DPW capital plan, were you able to receive any comments back from DPW about some of the questions that I had raised?
Not yet, but I do know that the smaller increases, those are annual adjustments, just to say, we continue to move this forward. We know that inflation is causing materials to cost more. So those are growth points that they just add in a little bit more until they can actually go out to bid and figure out what the pricing is. Yeah, I have not heard back yet from on the
That generator?
The generator, thank you, the generator.
Yeah.
Generator, which,
Okay.
and I believe, if I'm correct, I remember from our conversations that it was a whole building generator as opposed to a generator that only ran small systems for a short period of
I
time.
think that was the discussion we were having around the table,
Yeah.
during the workshop. But it,
Hours or something.
Yeah, so then this would create the whole school as sort of the whole school would be powered in the event of an emergency, and therefore could be used for shelter purposes as well.
yeah, thank you. I mean, it just,
Yes, yep, same thing, yep, trying to make sure that we're double dutying some of these large buildings that we have in case of an emergency.
I think that'd just be helpful to know
Yeah,
as we
yeah.
move forward.
Yeah, my fault, I think I reached out and then I.
Not your fault.
I
You got a lot
went down a
going
different
on. It's all good, just asking a question.
Yeah,
So, on the transportation, just to reiterate, that $650,000 savings, was relative to the cut being made from the 33 buses back down to 25 buses.
Correct.
So I do want to kind of hammer that one home, because that was, all of us sitting around the table having the conversation, knowing that we needed to look at whatever reductions to try and assist us as we move forward towards this budget. So in my little happy land, I'm going to think that we already took a reduction of a good chunk of change, because I think that was being smart and frugal on how we handled our logistics. So I'm putting that on my list of a check mark of 650 taken off. I do also want to kind of highlight, you definitely mentioned it, but the increase in the special education for out of district, they actually, 2 years prior to us getting hit with the 14%, that was on an on hold, if I remember correctly, right? We had a 0% because the state actually made them all stay at that same level, correct? So then there was a 14% jump, which you can all envision that all of us would be pretty much flipped out by having 14% at one point anyway. So then if we just roll that forward, I mean, it's a pretty large percentage that we've had to take, and, we often call that our
10% since then.
Yeah, we kind of often call that our snow and ice, because we have no control over that. That's just kind of handed to us.
Well,
It also was a pretty, that 14% was devastating for school districts, because the previous 10-year average was like 1.7%.
Yep.
So it was out of the blue. We were not prepared for it.
and it came in the middle of the year, after the budget was already set.
It was not a great letter to receive.
So I just want to clarify, so we had the 14% that year, and then the year after was 4.65%. Prior to that, any other year in my 18 years was under 3%, and none of that was reflected. That 14% was not reflected in our budget. It's been picked up, and we've been relying on our circuit breaker reimbursement. So to the point where we don't have contingencies for a student who moves in. So I just want to clarify that the large increase predominantly is due to us not having built that in over the last couple of years. And it's not due to a high increase in the number of students who are being outplaced. We have had an unanticipated residential placement, but other than that, like our number of students in placements has been consistent. It's just that we haven't actually reflected it in the budget that we've put forward to the city.
Exactly.
And and to just clarify for those watching, the money that we're talking about specifically pays for students whose needs are more than we can handle in district. So we have to pay, all school districts, pay for those students to leave our district and go to specialized schools that meet their needs. For some of these students, they're day programs. So we're paying for transportation for them to get there, spend their days there, and then come back home. For other students who may need a higher level of need, these are residential programs that cost roughly $300,000 a year for one student. And if one student moves into our district and has that level of need, we have to find that $300,000 in order to send them to these programs. And the way the circuit breaker works is it pays for things that happened a year ago and reimburses us for it. So it's not like we get the bill for the school and we send it and pay for it through circuit breaker. We have to find the money, meet the needs of these students, and then after a certain percentage, because it's not 100% reimbursement, we get reimbursed partially a year later for the cost of educating these students. And that's where that 14% came in. So, our internal staff that work with special education students work really hard to keep kids in what we call least restrictive settings. As much as possible, we like to keep them in district, providing them with that care. We don't get this kind of reimbursement money for those students
This only kicks in if we do get other reimbursement through federal grants, but this particular pot of money only pays for last year's special education students who go out of district.
That's correct. And the model itself, and when we talk about a reimbursement model, I want to make sure that everyone understands, it's not a reimbursement of every penny that we spend. So we are responsible for the first approximately $50,000 of the cost per student for the special education expenditures. After that, the money that's greater than $50,000, we can receive up to 75% reimbursement for that from the state for those expenditures. It's not always 75%. Sometimes it's 67, it's been 40. And the problem that we're having now is we're finding out what that reimbursement number is in like October, well after we built the budget, well after we're operating inside of the year. So it's not a one-to-one reimbursement. It's a much smaller reimbursement, and that number looks big, that $2 million that we have listed in the presentation. But it's much smaller than what we than the $8 million that we're spending on out-of-district tuitions, or the $1 million we spend on transportation for special education. All of that, we're only getting a fraction of that in a reimbursement, and as you said, in arrears. So in arrears.
So my whole point was actually kudos, because the special education group has been working very tirelessly to make sure that we have as much as we can here in district to meet those needs, to keep those kids supported here in district. Because if we can keep everyone here in district and meet their needs appropriately by having the appropriate staff and support services, it is normally at a more controlled manner where we understand what those operating costs may be, where when we have to send any students out of district, we really have no say in what those costs may be, because we just simply must meet their needs. So that was, that's a huge amount that we have to take on, and it fluctuates, and we have no way of monitoring this because it has not been reflective of anything prior to COVID. Let's put it that way. It has not. Moving forward about the math curriculum, absolutely correct. In fact, I just was seeing an article where it was highlighting down in Louisiana how they've actually made huge strides because they moved their whole state. There was a push for high quality curriculum, and they've actually made huge strides of improvement because of having the curriculum that met the specific needs. So when you're talking about meeting the needs of the high quality curriculum that DESE is pushing out, that's a have to. That's not a wish list. That's a must. And I really look back on that. Well, I guess before I go back to that one, I also want to say you put up the funding that's the Title I, IDEA, and all of that, and the question mark. Well, luckily our wonderful DOE ma'am, Linda McMahon, said on the media this week that don't worry, this year none of that money was going to get taken away. That IDEA and Title I, don't worry, it's all going to be there. So we'll see. But she certainly was promoting that that wasn't going to happen. But the DOE is all getting dismantled, so who the heck knows? But I would certainly hope that at minimum it's going to stay intact now. The discussions that we were having at MASC was the concern is actually for next year.
Yes,
not,
for FY
not
27.
26 budget,
Yep.
but for 27 budget. So bluntly, I think we need to do all we can to make sure that we appropriately fund for our students now, because we don't know what's coming. So I'm not waiting for a rainy day. So with that, I want to take us back to, and if you could do me a favor and going back to that per pupil slide, it's a favorite one of mine, that comparison.
Like the
Yeah, that
table?
one.
Okay.
I think it's really important that we take a look at this because we weren't above the state average until 2018 was when we were above state average on the expenditure. And we have continued to decrease across the board. So while I definitely feel that Marlboro has done what we can on funding our students and on this district, I would be remiss if I didn't say from 21 at minimum, we've flatlined. And I am quite concerned that the money that was coming in from the state and the feds have not reached its designation, which was here in the public schools, and our students have not received the money that they needed. And we are at a crux right here because we have worked for years exceptionally collaboratively with the mayor and the city council. Many years, as you had pointed out, it was 0% increase in '22, 4.24% increase in '23, a 3.62% in '24, and a 5.25 in '25. That was because of every single person working collaboratively. That means all of our staff, the contracts that we set, and everybody was working hand in hand together. We now need to work hand in hand together to make sure that our students are receiving the equity that they deserve. So we need to get this back up. And I have really wrestled with this, and I recognize that we are definitely asking for a good amount and a higher percentage than was forecast, but I can't in all good consciousness not ask for the full request of the 11.1% because we've got to get things back on track. And back on track means funding, which means the free cash that is there. We've got to hopefully have that conversation. It is a huge request, and I know it is. But I think it's time that we need to do all we can to try and get the money back in place so that we can make sure we're meeting the needs of the students. So, thank you.
Any other questions? We all set? Move on? Moving on. Acceptance of minutes. Minutes of the February 25th, 2025 school committee meeting.
Motion to approve. Is that the one that has?
It's the 11th.
Okay.
March 11th is the.
Sorry, there has to
The
be
Ghost did one.
Motion to
Oh, sorry, motion to
approve
approve.
is on the table and seconded. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I just noted a couple of small corrections for the February 25th minutes. On number 11, members forum. Hold on, I gotta find it. Oh, my page is so small. It's referred to Officer Morrow. It's M-O-R-O.
Oh, it is, you're right. I wasn't.
And the Marlboro Junior Women's Club, it's in women's, it's an A, not an E.
I know. I didn't type it, sorry.
I know, I just, those little things. That's all for that one.
So I amend my motion to amended minutes.
And seconded. Questions, comments, concerns on the amended minute approval? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
And on the
Minutes.
motion to accept amended minutes, this was our little problems with technology
So can I
that,
read? So next thing on the agenda is the minutes from
Yeah.
March 11th,
March 11th.
2025 school committee.
Yeah, motion to accept the amended minutes of March 11th, 2025, whatever it is.
Can we share what those amended minutes
Yes,
are?
so on number 12, Mrs. Bodenhinger and I were both remote, and I heard Mrs. Bodenhinger vote in favor of adjourning, but you guys didn't because of it got garbled.
It was frozen.
So I just need to fix that.
So it's if you look at the vote, it says that it's a 601.
Right.
But I'm not listed at all, so.
Okay.
So either has to be 600 or add me as the,
So you just want to be represented?
I just want to be represented.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you.
I have another small correction, and this one's a little funny.
Sure.
On item, actually, I think it's in a couple of spots. On number 9, under B, actually, all of number 9, where you're listed as Matthews, it's only 1 T. On A and B. And
Oh,
a
yeah.
couple times under B.
Sometimes it's 1, sometimes
So,
it's
like-
2.
Actually, that whole minute's just double check all the Matthews have 2 T's.
Okay, on the 11th one or the 25th?
On the left.
March 11th.
On the 11th.
On B, it's written in the same thing, one with 2 T's and one with 1 T.
That's weird.
Yeah.
How do you spell your name?
2 T's.
Okay.
Okay, I'll correct that too.
That looks like it may have been like a copy and paste, and all the Matthews are
That's so,
wrong.
that is so weird. Okay, I will make that correction. So motion and to approve the
I
amended.
didn't catch that.
Okay. Motions on the table to amend the minutes and seconded. Questions, comments, concerns on the March 11th amended minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Alrighty, my favorite part, public comment. Is there any public comment? Public comment. Is there any public comment going twice? Seeing none. Public comment. Is there any public comment going 3 times? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Thank you. Action items and reports. The request to submit the FY26 budget for public hearing.
We do request, oops, I don't have it in front of me.
84 million.
$84,224,398.
Okay.
I'll make that motion. I move to support the superintendent's budget and move it for legal notice.
For public
Seconded.
hearing. Okay.
I second.
Question, comments, concerns regarding the FY26 budget for public hearing? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Superintendent search firm.
So we went out and did the procurement as requested for a superintendent search firm. We solicited quotes from the 3 firms that we were asked, NESDEC, MASC, and the Collins Center. MASC chose not to supply a quote, stating that they felt there was a conflict of interest and they did not want to breach that. So the 3 quotes that were, the 2 quotes that were received from NESDEC was $13,760, and from the Collins Center was $16,000. We have provided in the packet the scope that was used with the firms to provide to them what our expectations were. In addition to the written scope, I did have a phone conversation with each of the firms to make sure that all questions were answered prior to them providing us with a quote. So everybody was on the same page with this. So under the rule for award, the contract is to be rewarded to the responsible vendor offering the lowest price for the services listed in the scope, and that would be NESDEC. So NESDEC's proposal has been supplied as well in your packet. It's a very comprehensive proposal, runs through all of the duties that they're going to supply for us. So in this, this would be NESDEC doing a superintendent's search for the permanent superintendent. I do have to note that in conversation with each of these firms, they all noted that we are far too late in the year to be able to hire a permanent superintendent that could start for July 1st. So they all said that the best course of action would be to go with an interim. MASC, as part of your membership with MASC, you receive free interim search services from them. There's no cost to the district. They provide the entire service for free. So I would suggest, in addition to awarding to NESDEC for the permanent search for the superintendent, that we also have MASC do an interim search for us for July 1st.
I have a question regarding that. So, let's say we do go down the road of asking MASC to provide an interim search for us, and we contract with NESDEC. If we find an interim and don't go through that process with NESDEC because we've chosen to make that interim a permanent, where do we stand with NESDEC if we don't utilize their services, but we've contracted with them?
Good question.
Can I ask something on that?
Yeah.
So the question, though, is that if these companies don't feel like they could proceed with doing this until essentially next school year, we would not be able to even sign a contract because we would need to wait until we had money appropriated for next year.
For next year, okay.
So I hear where you're going, but I don't think we can
Correct.
move forward on hiring a search firm
If they're not going to be able to
because
complete it.
Can't
in
use
this
this
fiscal year.
year's money for next year's services.
so it kind of puts it into a moot category at this point that we can't proceed with either of these quotes currently. At least that's my read of the situation, and maybe I'm wrong.
I agree with it.
Yeah, I mean, not knowing what the appropriation is for next year, that's correct, because we do have to have an appropriation in order to award. You could vote and have a letter of intent, and if you don't get the appropriation, then we'll check into that before we actually do it. But we could move down that path and have them on hand, ready to go. Certainly, the quote process could remain valid. I can reach out to NESDEC and ask how long they can hold that price firm for us. I imagine it doesn't look a lot different from what I've seen in the past over the past 5 or 6 years. The price hasn't shifted too much. Oddly, with inflation touching everything else, hasn't seemed to touch this type of service. So.
Okay.
So
Or we can just choose to put it on hold for now, go through our process for an interim, and then sometime next year,
Revisit it again.
when we, revisit how things are going with the interim, we can choose to go out for bid again.
could we just at least ask Mr. Wells to reach out to NESDEC to see how long this bid could at minimum stay in place, so that at least we would have that awareness
Happy
of
to do it.
understanding?
Yeah, happy to do it.
Even though we would put it on hold, but if you could gather that information for us?
Can you repeat that?
If we could ask Mr. Wells to contact NESDEC and to understand how long will they hold this price, this quoted price, so that way then we would at least know if they'll hold it for, say, 6 months, 9 months, whatever it is, so at least we have an awareness of the price point. And then we could table this situation for now.
Right, and there also might be municipality rules under the bid process of how long it can.
Yeah, and again, we have the scope, we have everything all together, we have the firms again, so, we could, the next time around, if we had to go back out and do this quote again in July, it's going to be quicker because we don't have to actually write all that up, so it's all, the file's ready to go, I'll just copy it over and we'll move forward. And I'll just tell the firms this time that they really do only have 24 hours to get back to us. We did have some delays, and I think it may have been because people were not in the office who were there that needed to actually do the quote. So, but I can certainly be happy to push harder next time as well. Trying to play nice in the sandbox.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns regarding this? Yes, Mr. Dan.
I'm just curious where this would put us in terms of going through the search process. How far away are we from actually doing a search? It seems like this is going to delay us an awful long time
On which search?
on the actual
The full search? So your idea, so the search generally, if you started it in August, you started your process and started pulling up your surveys and reaching out to all the parent groups and teachers and everyone and creating your portrait of a candidate, you would be ready to be advertising the job in October or November easily, without much question. So you would be at the forefront of the the new search process for next year. So it won't delay you by much. You certainly do have time to be able to hold back and have these conversations. It's usually a superintendent search process run by a firm. It's generally about a 3 to 4 month process with collection of the data and everything. Contracting takes a little bit longer because you've got to negotiate back and forth. That can take a couple months, but actually getting a candidate you want to work with, about 3 to 4 months. So we just don't have quite enough time this year to get it done successfully, and then also go into negotiations afterwards. But certainly we'd be able to hit the ground running in next year in August, and be able to be at the forefront of all the jobs that are getting posted.
When you say next year, are you talking fiscal or?
Fiscal, yeah. So August of
So a few months.
2025. Yeah, just a couple of months. Yeah.
After July 1.
Yep.
Then maybe I'm just being a little bit music teacher here, but you have to explain it to me a little bit. So what's the reason for doing this again? Explain to me why we're doing that. What would that help? Waiting.
There's not enough time to
Because
do it this
the
year.
the search companies
Can't
have
provide the
actually
service.
said
Yeah.
that they do not recommend us moving forward right now in doing a search. They feel that we would not necessarily receive or have the best opportunity for the most qualified candidates. And so that's why they're asking, they're suggesting, that being the case, to move it out where it would hit a better cycle, if you will, I guess.
So the general timeline for actually going out for a superintendent search with a search firm would follow like this. If you were to award tonight and we were to start tomorrow, you would spend the month of April collecting your survey information. So by May 1st, you're probably ready they would have a job description based upon the information they collected. May 1st, you're releasing that job to the street. Through the month of May, you're going to keep it open for a month because you want to give the ability for people to actually apply to it. So you're looking at early June before you're even looking at the applications to see who you want to interview. So let's say you're going high speed on this and you're jumping right into it. That first week of June, you're going to look at the applications, maybe set up interviews for the second week of June. You don't even have time at that point because our last day of school is the 17th. You don't have time for on-site visits if you're choosing 3 to 5 candidates to come in, where you actually have students on site. So you may not get the full interview you're even looking for at that point. And even if you did, you're now at the end of June and saying, okay, I like this candidate and we want to move forward with that person. They probably have more, the average is a 90-day out clause within their current contract. So you're looking at 90 days before they'd be able to leave, and probably most people who are leaving the position would not come here before October 1st anyway, because they would feel obligated to get their new district started. Plus, you would have all the negotiations. It can take a month or two to get the negotiation done as far as getting the contract settled, what the price is, the soft costs, all of that. So we just don't have the time to get somebody on board for July 1st. And if we're going to delay that long, we might as well delay just a little bit further and get a lot of people, assistant superintendents or superintendents who are deciding not to renew, make that decision within the September-ish timeframe. So you'd be hitting really early in the market of everyone who's deciding, I am going to go out and see what's available for me within the market. So you would be early in that, very early in the candidate pool, which would give you the best opportunity to see all of the candidates that are out there. It's very frustrating to run a search, and as you're saying, oh, these are my 3 finalists, one's saying, oh no, I just accepted here, and they start to drop as you're kind of moving forward. That's frustrating just to go through that. Norwood did it last year. They lost, I think, 2 candidates during the process, and they weren't even that late in their start. They were pretty early on. So.
Okay,
So the alternative to this, go ahead.
one more thing for the music teacher. Where is the interim coming into this?
That's what I was just going to address.
Okay, just,
So-
okay, see.
Interim process is certainly much shorter. So with the interim process, MASC has a whole bunch of candidates that they have available. It's just they have their network.
It's a new cottage industry, I know.
Yeah, and they know that they're hiring for a temporary position, generally a one-year placement. But that person could come in and absolutely wow us, and we could say, you know what, we don't want to go with anything else. That's also a possibility, but it becomes like a working interview almost at that point. But they can do it much faster. The process that you're not looking for who's my next 3 to 7 years. You're looking at who's my next 12 months is really what you're doing with that. So they'll bring forward candidates that are qualified, maybe folks that might be retired and want to come back and work a year, or maybe people that are just available in the market.
Giving Mary the evil eye.
Yeah, I know. I've been throwing numbers at her for a while, but she's not biting. Yeah, and so it's a much shorter time frame, a month or two, to get on an interim on board. And then, of course, they're going to have, their own contract they have to work through as well. But with an interim, there's people out there who are available on July 1st. So.
Yeah, so, and when you're looking at an interim, it could be someone like a retired superintendent that wants to work for an extra year, would be pretty much like a placeholder for us. Or there are people, and I know that there are people that have been reaching out to both the district and to some of us who are interested in looking at an interim placement year with the potential that they could be our next superintendent, that they are actively working right now. They're not retired superintendents. And so it is possible that we could find an interim that would start, July 1st, and we'd have a practice year with that person to see if they liked us, if we liked them, if it worked out or whatever. And if that were to work out, then we could just appoint that person and not have to go through a search anyways.
And a
it could
non-retiree
not
doesn't
work out.
require a waiver.
Correct. So somebody who's just taking a job doesn't require that whole process of getting a waiver like the retired superintendents who only get them for 6 months now anyways. So,
That's right.
So that leads me to a question. If we do go the interim route, when would we need to decide whether or not we're going to pursue the external search? Like what's I know you suggested getting ahead of it, but what would be when would we have to know whether
Right.
or not we want to pursue the existing candidate or?
That's my same question, because again, if
So-
we like the candidate and then we want to hire them and we started the search, we're wasting the money
Right.
to do the search when we already have a candidate. So like that.
I've
like
worked with a number of
that's-
interims. Been so lucky.
One, too.
And I was one twice. It was kind of fun. So generally, pretty quickly if they're making the grade that you want or not. Just think about your own careers. When you work with people, within a couple of months, is this person going to be someone that I want to work with? Or are we 90-daying this person right now? Yeah. So pretty quickly, and you'll feel that pretty quickly here as well. You'll start to get that whole sense of it. If that person is in here as the interim and they're really kind of hitting strides, you'll feel that. You're going to hear it. You're not going to miss it. You guys are too connected to the schools anyways to not hear and feel that as it's moving through. So I have no fear that you're not going to know exactly where you stand within a couple of months.
and if they start July 1st, and we know by, let's say, October, that
Yeah.
maybe not,
Yes.
then we
Yep.
start the search.
Yep. And then you're right in your timeline right
We're
there.
in the
Yeah.
timeline.
Yeah.
Go ahead, speak.
All right. Please don't take this the wrong way, but it feels like we're just wanting to take an interim for a test drive more than look for a superintendent, and that's what I'm concerned about. I'm not sure what our intention is.
What's wrong with that?
Then
I mean, I don't know that that's actually the case, but even if it was the case, what would be wrong with that?
I see where you're coming from, but I think whoever the candidate is knows going in because of the interim. So it's complete transparency. It's not like, oh, you're going to be a new superintendent for years to come. It's an interim. Like they know
Right.
that it's
They're applying
there's
as
a-
an interim.
all right.
They know what
Yeah.
what they're applying for.
Yeah, I can see your point because that
yeah, it's
And I would also say about the market, the first superintendent search I did was back in 2012. That superintendent search, we had 90 candidates apply.
What year was this?
This was 2012. We had 90 apply. I would say 40 were qualified, and we trimmed it down to 20 for interviews, and then there were 11 for second interviews, and then they brought 5 in. So, right, that was the market. Now, the last one I did, we had 16 come in. 7 of them right off the bat were like, you don't even have the license. Like, you're not qualified in any way, shape, or form. So you're down to 7 candidates that you're kind of looking at, and you're like, yeah, we're interviewing everybody because we don't have
And last time we did a
the luxury.
national search, we didn't even have those kind of numbers.
Right, we did a national
We
search.
did a national search, and
Yeah.
Right, we had
The
three-
candidate pool's not there.
No,
It's
I know.
just
Well,
not.
two of them were from out of state, two of the,
Yeah, Dedham's was the same way. A lot of ours were Colorado, California, Florida. Well, the money's good in Massachusetts. I get it,
Well, when we
but the
wound up
qualifications are
hiring
hard too.
was from Massachusetts. So
Yeah.
we spent all this money on this intergalactic search
Yeah.
just to hire somebody from up the road. I mean, it was ridiculous.
I love when she says that.
Intergalactic.
Wow. I'd like to see those candidates. Intergalactic. Wow. Any further discussion?
Dan's Catherine.
Dan has another, keep going,
Things
Dan.
together. So are we asking MASC to look for an interim first?
Well, I think we have to have that conversation. Do we want to, like, where do we stand? Mrs. Hennessy has requested that we at least find out how long this bid would be good for, just so we have that information.
Yep.
So that's keeping that
Yep.
in the wings. We have to decide if, I think, do we have to vote to say we are going to entertain, we are going to hire someone in the interim?
Well, we would need to actually suspend the rules
Right.
to actually add that item.
Of course. but
Right.
I'm just laying out
Okay, I
where
just-
we go
I
here.
just
yes.
wanted to make
Right,
sure.
because it's not on the agenda.
Right.
So, but we're still in the midst of the same conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. We would have to post the job as an interim, and then we'd have to, come up with our process from then. We could choose to use MASC to get more candidates. I know that people are sending resumes. People are already asking about this. So.
I think we would not do the city a disservice if we didn't utilize all possible
100%.
avenues.
I'm just saying, like, there are people out there that are interested.
Oh, I'm-
And MASC can facilitate that.
Right.
Just for disclosure, the reason MASC would not quote us is because I sit on the board of directors, and they felt it was a conflict of interest for us to pay them. But for this part of it, it's a free service that they offer, so it's not a conflict.
I disagreed, and I did argue it, but I could not get through.
I disagreed also,
Yeah.
and I argued, but.
It was just a conversation to try.
Convincing someone to pay them money.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
Please.
I don't
please
think it's a
let me pay you.
conflict, but it's, either way, it's
Yeah.
not, there's no payment involved, and it's part
Right,
of the
yeah.
service they
You
provide
already
us
pay.
as members.
You already pay for it as a
We
member.
already
Yeah.
paid for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 100%. I think we should engage all ways of getting candidates. Does that answer your question?
All ways of getting candidates for the interim.
For the interim.
Okay, just making sure my ducks are in the same row yours are in. Okay.
Ms. Hennessy.
So with that, if we are going to continue this conversation about looking for an interim, I guess my question would be, do we need to then create an ad hoc small group of the school committee to at least start reviewing things? Because otherwise, we're waiting every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks kind of thing. And I'm thinking we probably want to try and work with MASC to try and speed that up some.
Right.
So I'm just putting that out on the table too.
I agree as well. I was going to bring up the same thing. It would be, if we're going to move forward in this direction, it'd be great to have at least one representative who can work, I can work together with, so we can kind of move down the path and keep things moving forward, so that when we're coming back every 2 weeks, we have a lot of ducks in the row that we can bring forward. So I'd also like a partner to help carry the backpack.
Right. Exactly.
Ms. Matthews?
So I would like to make a motion to suspend the rules, to add an agenda item to make a determination now, or to vote on pursuing a search for an interim superintendent. So that's-
Second.
first is the suspension of the rules.
Motion on the table and seconded regarding to suspend the rules to discuss city vote for a superintendent interim search. Questions, comments, concerns? To suspend the rules. Seeing none, all in favor. Motion carries 6-0.
Then I would like to make a motion that we move forward with hiring MASC to help us with an interim superintendent search, and that we create either 3 people again, or 1 person, or 2 people for the.
Let's just start with voting on to actually.
Okay, we'll
do-
start. Okay, yeah, that's fine. So,
Second.
Okay.
Whatever
so
she said.
Motion is on the table.
yeah.
Motion is on the table to open up an interim search for a superintendent and utilizing MASC to get all the intergalactic candidates we possibly can.
For an interim search.
Correct,
Yeah,
for an interim search.
Interim superintendent.
Questions, comments, concerns regarding that motion? Seeing none. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Okay. I would assume that we can start that search and then we can figure out the ad hoc committee during our next, or do we want to do that now? I don't know what the leeway or time frame is
I
to
actually
post.
would ask that we could consider actually creating an ad hoc now so that we can support Mr. Wells.
Okay.
Because I feel like otherwise it puts, if he just has a conversation with one of us, it puts one of us kind of in an awkward position of speaking on behalf of the committee when we really don't, like.
Agreed. Yes, exactly what she's saying.
How many people should be on this ad hoc committee?
I would like to be on it.
Do we have to pull names again?
3 school committee members.
I think 3 is good because it's not a quorum, so we can.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So we can have conversations and.
Okay. Are you superintendent searched out? I figured. Anyone from this side?
I am not.
Unless Heidi wants to,
No,
I'm glad-
no,
I'm
Dan.
glad if you want me to.
Okay, no, I'm happy
So
with Mrs.
why
Hennessy,
don't-
Mr. Caruso.
Why don't you make a motion for the 3 members, and then we can.
So I'd like to make a motion
go.
that
Let's
Dan
speed this along.
Caruso, right? Dan?
Yep.
Dan Caruso, Michelle Bodenhedinger, and Catherine Hennessy be on the ad hoc search
Interim
committee.
superintendent.
Interim superintendent search committee.
God. Excellent.
Seconded. Voting.
Okay.
Noses, too, because.
Motion's on the table and seconded. Questions, comments, concerns regarding the new ad hoc team that we just created tonight.
Tool's sitting over there going,
Let's
I'm glad I'm graduating this year.
no, he's nice, got another year.
Oh, he's only a junior. We got him for 2 years.
Can we please vote on this so we can move it along? Okay. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on.
Released, oh, I'm sorry.
Moving on to the principal's salary range. Miss Heidi. That is you, yes.
So, we, 2 weeks ago, we met, right? Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago, yes, okay. So, periodically, salary ranges are reviewed, and the negotiation subcommittee met with the superintendent, and we went over some comparisons of urban districts, local districts to us, and so on. We did find, other than, you just said that Hudson went a little higher in their current search.
They just advertised at 130 to 150 for an elementary.
Right.
Is the document that's embedded here correct? That's not what we agreed to.
The document that's embedded here is what we agreed because we kept the bottom numbers the same, right? And yes,
So you switched it out? Okay.
yes, I fixed it.
Yes. And so, what we are proposing, it was 5%, right? Was the number that we decided to go on the high end, maintaining the low end of our range, but giving a latitude of 5% over the last approved increase.
Here to here, yes, here.
And primarily, in our conversation, and I think what's important to note is that the range represents gives the latitude to the superintendent to hire somebody either as a first-time principal, or as years of experience. And I will say this publicly, I know that we will probably have candidates within our district that may be earning things in that range or maybe even above, depending on how it's structured. But for those roles, it would be a first-time principal role. And so, yes, there's latitude, but it doesn't always mean you're always going to make more in your new position. Doesn't sound right, but it is. It's a new role. And we're not, as you said, Hudson just hired or is just posting at a higher range than they have in the past, but they also have I think 3 principals to hire. Yeah, and that's, again, if their Prop 2.5 passes. So what's proposed here is a 5% increase, and I would like to make a motion that we approve this so that the superintendent can move forward with posting for Good now.
So they don't have to necessarily start at 122? Is that
They could start at 122.
It's the range.
She has,
Yes.
yes,
I can
Based on
hire it anywhere
experience.
in the range.
yes.
Yeah.
And this salary represents, is reflected in the budget for fiscal year 26 as
Yes.
well, correct?
Yes,
Sue Wells is aware of that salary range for the budget.
yes.
Going forward, yeah.
I made a motion.
There's a motion.
Second?
Seconded. Question, comments, concerns? Yes.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Since you may be in a position as the superintendent needing to hire for multiple roles, dependent upon that experience, is there an opportunity, should the superintendent feel that she needed an additional percentage or two, that she's made a reduction elsewhere? Can she come to the negotiations committee to have a conversation about it? I'm just trying to understand if there's any additional flexibility or it is that specific window.
I get what you're saying, but I think when we first had the conversation 2 weeks ago about, we were, again, being a little bit conservative at first, just adding a 3%. And I said, no, let's add the 5% because it gives us a couple of years worth, hopefully, of opportunity. I mean, I guess in any case, the superintendent can come back to the negotiations committee at any time if they feel they have somebody who's overqualified or qualified and deserves to receive more. But I feel that this is a pretty good range.
I ask that only because I think as we've discussed over the years, the importance of the review process. And if somebody is really exceeding, very much so, and then we have someone, let's say, that might be on the lower end, I think it might allow the conversation to flow a little bit easier to say, hey, we'd like to entertain an up on this percentage. I'm just thinking about if you really compare it to sometimes in businesses, you slide down on others and you slide up a little bit here or there. So I just was curious if that might be something.
But going back to, you're talking about a review or an evaluation. If it's an internal person, you might have that gauge as far as what they've done in a different role. Or if it's an external person and you're going based on recommendations and things like that, I'm not quite sure if you.
I guess I'm thinking more on the internal.
Is there a question for like a new hire, or is it just?
No, I'm thinking more from an internal standpoint.
But that was the discussion that we had at the subcommittee, because we do have veteran principals in this district. So that was the discussion to up that minimum, like the maximum.
Right.
So that we had more room for growth. But like I said, at the elementary, it's still lower than our neighbors. We didn't go into that conversation knowing that.
Right.
But that is the reality. So no one's going to join us making, I can't imagine starting a contract with anyone making more than our veteran,
Right.
high-performing
Right.
school leaders.
Right.
Because, like, I will argue all day long that they deserve more than the highest there.
Right, exactly.
Are there any current principals that make 122?
No.
No.
Just had to ask. Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion on the table, and I believe it was seconded, correct?
Correct.
Any other further questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Okay. Moving on to acceptance of donations and gifts. We have Richer PTO to benefit the Richer Elementary School for $500.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve is on the table and seconded. Questions, comments, concerns regarding the donation from the Richer PTO? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries. Thank you, Richer PTO. And I believe that is it. Okay, moving on. Reports of school committee subcommittees. Anything? Yes, Ms. Ryan.
So I guess I can do an update on the school building committee. We did meet earlier today. It was our kickoff meeting because we have hired our designer, which is Lamro Pagaro. So they were our designer for the initial Goodnow Brothers School. So we were happy to be working with them again. It was a very informative meeting combined with Vertex, the OPM. So the next stage of the game is we are now in the feasibility study, so they will identify several options for us to hopefully review probably at the end of like 3 or 4 months. So that's kind of the process of where we are at this point.
All systems go.
So they will be studying everything.
To clarify, so that includes location.
So yes, they will, one of the locations they will look at is the existing Richer building and whether or not it will be a renovation or a new build. And they will investigate a couple of other properties in town. We don't know what those properties are yet, whether it's an existing building or a parcel of land. And they are also, part of the feasibility study was also around Kane and the potential renovation. You know, there's that current modular there, and, you know, whether they can rebuild that one section. They'll be looking at all the options, and they will report back, kind of like last time, like 5 years ago, they came back with, here's option A, B, C, D, what's your appetite, these are the ramifications, this is the cost. They'll also lay out the cost of renovation versus cost of new build. So we'll get a full report from them probably after 3 or 4 months.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any other subcommittee? Yes, Ms. Hennessy.
Thank you. For policy, we have a date of April 9th for our next subcommittee meeting. Unfortunately, we set that date, and then 5 seconds later, I heard from Earl that he has a conflict. But I think we're going to need to proceed on trying to have that, since we've had such a tough time trying to come up with dates, and we'll just need to keep him updated. So, April 9th, policy.
Okay. Anything else? No? Moving on. Members forum.
I have reviewed and I have signed the warrant tonight.
Much. Okay.
Do you have anything?
I just needed to apologize because I was in error with the traffic commission. I misread, and I know it was normally Wednesdays, so that's on me.
It is normally Wednesdays, you are correct. We have creatures of habit, so it's all good.
So, from Members Forum, I just wanted to congratulate the cast and crew of The Lightning Thief, the MHS musical that happened this past weekend, the Percy Jackson musical.
Thanks. It is
It
great.
was very fun.
And The big news is all of us got the email, but the MHS Jazz Ensemble earned a gold award at the Mass Association for Jazz Education State Festival this past weekend in Norwood. I was lucky enough to be able to attend at my old middle school, which was so bizarre. The back of the payphone was still there. But anyway, I digress. But yes, I was at, it was in Norwood. It was great to actually hear them. They were fantastic. And I was actually there when some of the kids found out they got gold, and to see these kids so excited
great.
together and celebrating together, because it was during like the beginning of before the musical had started. It was awesome. So congratulations to Jeremy Verdone and his efforts and getting these kids to be these fantastic musicians. So, yay.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Nothing? Okay.
You got some?
No
Motion to adjourn.
updates?
Oh, cool.
Masters of the Universe in the
nothing
robotics
much.
world?
Nothing much, no.
Okay. Give it to me.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn is on the table and seconded. Questions,
Did you have
comments?
something?
I'm a little,
Did you?
I woke up early, then I'm still slow. Yeah, just quick. I think it's appropriate that we note the passing of Don
Oh,
Landers,
Don
our
Landers,
teacher and former
yes.
assistant superintendent and co-founder or founder of the Academy program.
Yes.
Yes, it's a huge loss to the city. Huge, huge
Superintendent.
loss. Thank you. Okay. Motion is on the table and seconded to adjourn. Questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none. All in favor of adjourning at 9:09. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.